Judith was a beautiful lady who had experienced a lot of pain and loss in her life. She was the only child of her parents, who had died in a motor accident when she was just a little girl. After their death, Judith was left alone and had to live with her uncle, who took very good care of her. As Judith grew older, she became a stunning young woman. She got married to a man named Michael, who seemed kind and gentle. But, behind closed doors, Michael had a devilish and dirty character. He was a womanizer and loved everything under his skirts. Despite being married to Judith for 5 years and having 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, Michael was not satisfied. He made advances on any female friend that Judith had, and didn't even hide it from her. This made Judith have sleepless nights, and it disturbed her that her husband was chasing her friends away. One day, Judith caught Michael red-handed, trying to seduce one of her friends. She was devastated and confronted Michael. "Michael, how can you do this to me?" Judith asked, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you love me and our children? Why do you need to chase after other women?" Michael looked at Judith with a sheepish grin. "I'm sorry, Judith. I don't know what comes over me. I just can't help myself." Judith was furious. "Can't you help yourself? You're a grown man, Michael. You need to control your desires and respect our marriage." Michael looked down, avoiding Judith's eyes. "I'll try, Judith. I promise. But, please forgive me." Judith shook her head. As days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, Michael continued his life of infidelity, leaving Judith heartbroken and devastated. One day, Judith sat alone in the sitting room, crying and talking to herself. "What kind of husband did I marry?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "I'm a child of no father, no mother, no brother or sister. I was only raised by my uncle, who took care of me and loved me like his own daughter. And now, I'm stuck in this loveless marriage with a man who doesn't even respect me." Judith thought about her options. If she could leave Michael and go back to her uncle's house, but she knew that would be a burden on the old man. He had already done so much for her, raising her from a little girl to a grown woman. "If I leave Michael now, with our 2 children, where will I go?" Judith asked herself. "I won't go back to my uncle's house. He's already done too much for me. I'll just have to stay in this marriage and endure everything that Michael is doing." Judith wiped away her tears and took a deep breath. She knew she had to be strong for her children's sake. She couldn't give up on her marriage, no matter how hard it was. "I'll just have to pray that one day, Michael will change," Judith said to herself, tears rising up in her eyes again. "I'll pray that he'll realize what he's doing and stop cheating on me. I'll pray that our marriage will get better. And we'll be happy again." As Judith cried, she felt a sense of determination wash over her. She knew she couldn't give up on her marriage, no matter how hard it was. She had to keep fighting, for her children's sake, and for her own sake. Despite Judith's good character, beauty, and everything, Michael never looked back on cheating. He only made sure that he provided for her, giving her everything she needed. He opened a big boutique for her and bought her luxurious things, but that didn't stop him from cheating. The fact that Michael kept cheating and misbehaving had given Judith some mental issues. Even when she sat in her boutique shop, customers would be talking to her, but she would be physically present and absent-minded. Sometimes, her customers would advise her, telling her that whatever she was going through, she had to put it aside and concentrate on her business and take care of her children, because they knew that she is already a married woman. Judith would think to herself. But Michael didn't care. He continued his life of infidelity, always going out for clubbing with other women and coming back drunk late at night. Sometimes, Judith would find condoms in his pocket, and he would always smell of female perfume. Those things hurt Judith so badly that she would sit down in her bedroom and end up crying, talking to God to please change her husband one day. "I don't want to go back to my uncle's house," Judith would cry, tears streaming down her face. "He has done so much for me, and now I have 2 kids. What will he think of me? What will people say?" Judith would sit down, crying, while her husband Michael would be on the bed, sleeping and snoring heavily. Judith decided to share her personal family problems with her mother-in-law, since she didn't have a mother of her own to turn to for advice. She thought that her mother-in-law could be of help to her. One evening, Judith traveled to the village where her mother-in-law lived. It wasn't too far from their hometown, so she arrived after a short journey. Her mother-in-law welcomed her warmly, and after a short while, Judith sat down with her and started telling her about Michael's misbehavior. She explained how his infidelity was affecting her and how she had begged him to change, but he wouldn't listen. "I'd done everything possible to make him listen to me, but it seems like things are getting worse," Judith said, tears welling up in her eyes. But to Judith's surprise, her mother-in-law started laughing uncontrollably. Judith was taken aback and said, "Mother, whatever I've said here is not a laughing matter. I'm very serious about it. My husband's infidelity is getting out of hand." Her mother-in-law continued laughing, and Judith couldn't understand why she wasn't taking her problems seriously. She waited for her mother-in-law to calm down and explain why she was laughing, but for now, she just sat there, confused and worried. Judith's mother-in-law finally spoke up, her voice dripping with venom. "What were you thinking, you poor girl from a low family? If you don't like the way my son is enjoying himself, then you should pack your things and go back to your dirty uncle's house. Let my son live his life in peace and enjoy himself." Judith was shocked. "Mother, I didn't expect this from you. You're a woman, just like me. You know how it pains a woman when her husband cheats on her." Her mother-in-law sneered at her. "You're not even happy with the luxurious things he buys for you. He opened a boutique for you, you drive one of the best cars in town, and you wear expensive wigs. Yet, you're not happy with it all. What exactly do you want? Do you want my son to kill himself for you?" Judith was taken aback. "Mother, how can you say such things? You're supposed to be a mother to me, not an enemy." Her mother-in-law moved closer to her, her eyes blazing with anger. "Men like my son, rich and powerful, they have 2, 3, 4 wives. But he kept you in the house, and he have his side chicks outside. You should be grateful, not complaining about his infidelity." Judith felt a stinging slap from her mother-in-law's words. "You're supporting evil, Mother. You're supposed to advise your son to do the right thing, not encourage him to continue cheating on me." Her mother-in-law's face turned red with rage. "If you're done with your trash, you can just go. Get out of my house. I thought you came here to tell me something better, like I'm expecting another grandchild. All you came here to do is complain and accuse my son of infidelity. Men are not saints, they will always humanize. So, get out of my house." Judith stood there, shocked and heartbroken, as her mother-in-law's words cut deep into her soul. After a few seconds of standing alone in the sitting room, shocked by her mother-in-law's hurtful words, Judith angrily left and drove home. She arrived home, feeling sad and confused, and went straight to her sitting room, where she sat down and burst into tears. "Oh, life without a mother, life without parents, it's very hard and difficult," Judith said to herself, crying. "This is what a woman who calls herself my mother-in-law says to me, all because I came from nowhere, my parents are no more, and my uncle, my good and sweet uncle who trained me until I became a woman," she referred to him as dirty and nobody. "God, why did you allow an orphan like me to go into a home that lacks so much respect for people? A home that only wants good for themselves?" Judith cried out loud for a short time before wiping away her tears. With newfound determination, she said to herself, I will confront my husband by myself again. Maybe, just maybe, he will change. Maybe I will speak things into him. God, please help me and change this man. It's really true that I don't have anywhere to go. This home, is my only hope. Judith started crying again, feeling overwhelmed by her situation, but determined to make a change. The next day, being Sunday, Michael was dressing up to go out. Judith saw this as an opportunity to talk to him. She went to him in the bedroom and asked, Where are you going? Michael replied casually, I'm just going to have some fun. Judith looked at him and said, Yes, today is Sunday. Why can't you stay here with your family? At least spend some time with me and our children. The children are missing their fatherly love. Michael shrugged and said, That will be next time. I have an appointment with someone today. Judith's eyes narrowed. Who could that be? Can't you cancel the appointment and spend time with us? Michael shook his head. No, it's very important. Judith's voice rose. Important? How can this appointment be more important than spending time with your children? You're not even considering their feelings. Michael sighed and said, Judith, you're disturbing me. Please let me get dressed and go. Judith felt a pang of sadness and frustration. She knew that Michael was lying to her, and it hurt her deeply. She stepped aside and let Michael finish dressing, wondering where he was really going and who he was going to meet. Judith looked at Michael with pleading eyes. Please, sweetheart, can I have a word with you? She asked. Michael nodded hastily. Okay, hurry up and say whatever you want to say. I'm already late for where I'm going. Judith took a deep breath and began. Please, my husband, if there's any way I've offended you, making you cheat on me and do it so openly, please tell me. I'll apologize and do whatever it takes to make you stop this infidelity. Michael smiled condescendingly. You didn't do anything to me. I provide for you, give you luxurious things, opened a boutique for you, and you drive one of the best cars in town. What else do you want me to do for you? You already have everything. Judith felt a sting from his words. Is that all marriage means to you? Providing material things? What about love, respect, and fidelity? Michael shrugged. I'm enjoying my time now. This is my chance to have fun, and I won't let you disturb me. You have everything you need, so don't complain about my cheating. Be grateful for what you have. Judith's eyes welled up with tears. I didn't do anything wrong by marrying you or giving you children. I wanted our family to be peaceful. Why are you doing this to me? Michael stood up, his expression unyielding. I've done nothing to you. There are many women out there looking for this golden opportunity you're complaining about. You have everything, but you're still not satisfied, Judith begged, holding his hand. Please, I want a peaceful home. Even if you take all these luxurious things away and give me peace of mind, I'll be happy. Please, stop hurting me. Michael angrily shook off her hand. You have everything you need. Don't disturb my private life. He walked away, leaving Judith alone in the bedroom, crying and shedding tears. Despite Judith's pleading, Michael didn't seem to care. Instead, he continued his life of infidelity, keeping late nights, clubbing with girls, and sometimes even bringing them home. Judith would try to talk to him, to remind him that their home was a matrimonial one, but Michael wouldn't listen. Each time Judith tried to intervene, Michael would stand up to her, saying, You're a nobody. You should be happy I married you and brought you into my life. Just stop disturbing my private life. Judith would walk away, tears streaming down her face, and lock herself in their bedroom, crying uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Michael would sit in the sitting room, enjoying himself with the lady he brought from the club. He would make love with the lady, while Judith cried herself to sleep, feeling helpless and alone. She wondered why Michael couldn't see that his actions were hurting her, why he couldn't understand that she wanted a peaceful and loving home. As the days went by, Judith felt like she was losing herself, like she was drowning in a sea of pain and heartache. She didn't know how much more she could take, how much more of Michael's infidelity she could endure. That night, Judith couldn't sleep. She tried to fall asleep, but her eyes refused to close. She sat up on the bed, crying and talking to herself. "What kind of marriage is this?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "My husband treats me like I'm nobody. I have nobody to share my problems with, not even a friend. He has used his infidelity to chase all my friends away." Judith thought about her mother-in-law, who was no help at all. "She reminds me all the time that I came from a home with no parents. She makes me feel so worthless." Judith sighed, feeling trapped in her marriage. "I'm only staying in this marriage because of my children. I don't want to raise them without a father. But their father doesn't even seem to care. If I leave now, he'll take everything away from me, and I'll be left to suffer and raise the children alone." Judith cried out to God, "Oh God, please help me out of this. How am I going to fix this marriage? My kids. I'm only here because of my children. God, please just help me and see me through this marriage." As the night wore on, Judith continued to cry, her heart heavy with sorrow. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, sleep began to creep into her eyes, and she drifted off into a restless slumber. One faithful night, Michael came home late and drunk, with a lady he had picked up from the club. Judith was fast asleep in their bedroom when Michael burst in, waking her up. "Leave the bedroom," Michael slurred, his eyes bloodshot from drinking. "I want to spend the night with my friend here." Judith was taken aback. "What do you mean? I'm your wife. You don't expect me to sleep in the sitting room while you sleep with a stranger in our matrimonial bed," Michael shouted at her, his voice menacing. "Leave the bedroom before I lose my temper." Judith knew that Michael was drunk and unpredictable, so she decided to leave the bedroom to avoid any physical harm. She walked out, her heart heavy with anger and sadness. As she stood outside the bedroom door, she heard the sound of laughter coming from inside. She couldn't believe that Michael was actually bringing another woman into their matrimonial bed. Judith's anger boiled over, and she started crying. She walked into the sitting room, sat down, and buried her face in her hands, asking God when all this would stop, but her tears were short-lived, as she soon heard noises coming from the bedroom. She stood up and walked back to the bedroom, and what she saw made her blood boil. Michael was having sex with the lady he had brought home, right on their matrimonial bed. Judith shouted at him, "Michael, stop. This is our matrimonial bed," but Michael just looked at her. His eyes filled with lust, and continued what he was doing. The lady with him was urging him on, telling him to be serious and focus, that she is really enjoying it. Judith's heart was broken. She felt like she was losing her mind. She ran back to the sitting room, confused and unsure of what to do next. The pain was too much to bear. Judith stood in the sitting room, her anger and pain boiling over. She couldn't take it anymore. She stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a kitchen knife, and marched back to the bedroom where Michael and the lady were still enjoying themselves. As she entered the bedroom, Judith raised the knife, ready to strike. Michael, sensing danger, quickly stood up and grabbed Judith's hand, holding it tightly, but Judith was beyond reason. She was consumed by anger and hurt. The club lady, sensing the tension, quickly snuck out of the room, grabbing her belongings and making a hasty exit into the night. As Michael struggled to take the knife away from Judith, she suddenly twisted her hand and cut off Michael's manhood. Michael felt a surge of pain and anger, and in a split second, he grabbed the knife from Judith and stabbed her in her stomach. Both of them were shouting and crying, pleading for someone to come and help them. But there was no one to hear their cries. except for their children, who woke up from the commotion and rushed into the bedroom. What they saw was too much for them to handle. Their parents, whom they loved and respected, were standing in the bedroom, blood flowing from their bodies and tears streaming down their faces. The kids couldn't do anything but shed tears and cry, begging God to please help their parents out of this mess. The scene was chaotic, with Michael and Judith still shouting and crying, and the kids wailing in the background. It seemed like the whole world had come crashing down around them, and they didn't know how to pick up the pieces. The kids ran outside their compound, desperate to find help for their parents. But as they stepped out into the night, they were met with darkness. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the distant hum of crickets. The kids became even more scared, realizing they were alone and helpless. They ran back into the sitting room, sat down, and cried, listening to their parents' muffled shouts for help. As the night wore on, the kids eventually fell asleep, exhausted from crying and worry. The next morning, the sun rose, and the kids woke up, still feeling scared and uncertain. They ran to their parents' bedroom, hoping to find them okay, but what they saw shocked them. Their parents were lying on the floor, motionless. The kids tried to wake them up, but they couldn't. Panicked, the kids ran outside, shouting for help. Their neighbors rushed into the bedroom, and to their greatest surprise, they found Michael and Judith lying lifeless on the floor with blood stains all over the room. The neighbors were shocked and didn't know how to break the news to the kids. They quickly made arrangements to take the bodies to the mortuary. Later that evening, an old woman from the compound sat the kids down and explained that their parents were no more. The fight they had the night before had taken their lives. The kids cried bitterly, realizing they were now orphans, left alone in the world without their parents.